And she was like, no, I know I would. And I'm like, you've never been in a gunfight. You've never been in one of these situations where your heart rate goes from, resting heart rate to 190 beats per second in, 1 second. Your tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, like you don't know how you would do in those types of situations.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Dog Ridgeside Radio podcast.
Whatever we want it to be.
Whatever we want it to be today. We got Mike of Ridgeside K9 EC Carolina. He's our glorious leader and owner. I'm a trainer with Ridgeside K9. Greg, also co-owner of Ridgeside K9 Dog Training Supplies. And today we got a couple good things to talk about with you, some things that we think you need to know, and I'll kick it to Mike.
Man, so I heard you had a pretty interesting event the other day with a dog and a bear trap.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't personal, but I got the phone call and I got the panic. And all of that. It was very deep. No, it was.
Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so Ashley and I and a lot of the trainers, we go, hiking a lot. We like to do a lot of stuff with our personal dogs. And she was hiking out with Drake and Dixie in the game lands down in Hampstead. Nice walking trails it's got down there, but it's also a public hunting game land where they have dove fields and they have a lot of other things, suitable for hunting, whatever it is. And what happened to me was I'm cleaning a kennel, cleaning, the van out, doing whatever, and I get a phone call from my panicked better half, saying Drake's foot is caught in a trap. And just the sheer amount of distraught coming from her voice, I knew this was not good. I was 40 minutes away from her. There was nobody else around, that could actually help her out. She was out there with one of her friends and her dogs as well. But it was that panic on the phone that I'm like, this isn't going to be good for her. Being able to work through this situation, me knowing what a bear trap is, me knowing, how to do stuff, and being able to see it. That was the very first thing that I'd wanted to do was I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
So her coming up on FaceTime out there in the game lands, blurry. It was all pixelated. I couldn't see anything. I know she said she FaceTimed you too. I don't know what else came through you, but mine was crap image, so I couldn't tell her all I wanted to do was
it was like trying to FaceTime on an iPhone 1.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to point and tell her touch that thing, open the trap, and you're gonna be fine. But with her panic and not being able to clearly show her that or tell her that through the phone, I was just rip that bitch out of the ground, and later on, afterwards, after it was all said and done, she had said there wouldn't have been anything other than time to get me through that, because she was in such a panic.
Oh yeah.
She was in such a mode where once she realized, once they did get the trap off, she was like, I'm stupid. And I'm like, obviously no, you're not. It's that adrenaline that we're going to talk about. It's that oh shit factor, not processing the scene clearly, and not being capable of processing the scene clearly when you let that kind of emotion overwhelm you. That kind of I'm used to calling it the fog of war.
Yeah.
When rounds are ripping, dust is flying all over the place. It's a very literal fog, and it's a very metaphorical fog of not being able to see clearly or think clearly.
I'll be honest. I've round tabled a bunch of chaotic events, and obviously I've done a lot of weird training with dogs in weird spots. Mm-hmm. A dog getting snagged by a bear trap has never been anywhere on my mind. Yeah, and I've been out there. I've trained, local agencies out there, and I even called some of those guys, and I was like, "Hey, have you ever considered this?" And they're like, "No, honestly, that's never come up." And I'm like, "Well, you should fucking think about it, because that just happened." Yeah. What are you gonna do when you're out hunting somebody and all of a sudden your dog gets snagged by a foot trap? And then how do you get him out, right? And then that leads into thankfully it was just a pressure one of the more humane ones, so it didn't rip Drake's leg up. But what are you going to do if your dog does get hit by one of those, and now all of a sudden you got to do trauma care, move your dog, still stay in the fight, whatever that is. It was interesting. But now she called me, and she, once I could understand what she was saying through bad connection and a little bit of stress, she was like, Drake is stuck in a bear trap. And I'm like, I'll hop on Google because I don't fucking know anything about a bear trap or how to release them. And then so I'm Googling. She's like, oh, thank God we got him out. And I'm like, shoo, I didn't know how to walk you through that one. And then I walk out and I'm like, hey, Marcy, do you know how to open up a bear trap? And she's like, yeah, just push the levers on the side. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? She's like, yeah, well, I grew up in a different area than you did.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, fair enough. Thankfully, Drake's good. He, once he was out of the trap, he was running around like nothing happened. I'm sure he got.
Yeah, I was shocked by that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would have milked that for everything it was worth.
Oh, she took care of him.
I'm sure he was the most spoiled he's ever been in his life.
Oh yeah, he got all the front seat car rides, all the pup cups, all the treats, all the extra cheek rolls. He's still being taken care of right now and babied.
Greg didn't get to sleep in bed. Drake did.
Absolutely.
No, so let's run that back to make it constructive rather than just a story. Obviously, we've both been in some very high stress environments, and unless you prepare yourself mentally, you can't deal with that, right? Like one of the things that drives me nuts is, people will say, if I was involved in this is what I would do. I'm like, have you ever been there? Nope. And I had this argument with my mom one time. It was around the time of one of the school shootings, and she was like, the officers were getting criticized for how they responded, and whether they did was right, wrong, whatever. Like, I wasn't there. And she was like, I would do this. I'm like, you don't know.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, I know I would. And I'm like, you've never been in a gunfight. You've never been in one of these situations where your heart rate goes from, resting heart rate to 190 beats per second in, 1 second. Your tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, like you don't know how you would do in those types of situations until you've trained it. And then you've actually rehearsed it, been in it, and done it many, many a times. And then you can maybe predict how you would respond. So I think one of the topics, like the fog of war, how do you personally work through that? Like when some shit happens, and it doesn't have to be something dramatic, like the average citizen or, whoever's listening to this is hopefully doesn't get in a gunfight. But dog runs away, you get in a car accident, something stressful you didn't anticipate happens. What's your process to work through that?
So, I mean, I definitely could lean into, what OODA loop is, being able to break down. It's more of a subconscious thing when you practice it and you train for it. Like you're not gonna, when shit hits the fan, I'm not personally saying, okay, let's orient myself. Okay, let's, decide on what I'm gonna do. Let's act on what I'm gonna do. All this kind of stuff. But like you said, it's the practice that you've done that becomes the muscle memory to get you through it. We talked about before, just understanding that the day is going to be over, for one. Like that's my first thing. Anytime there's a problem, anytime shit hits the fan, anytime, it's a small nuance kind of thing or it's something big, I know it's going to be over eventually. Like I know we're going to get past it. I know that time's going to heal it or the situation's going to become better eventually. Which that really helps me zone in to think clearly. First of all, is knowing that like, okay, situation's bad right now. Eventually it won't be though. So let's figure out how to get to that point.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to get to that point faster. Like I don't want to be in the stress. I don't want to be in the shit. Let's execute a plan that can get us away from this as soon as possible. And like for that, it's just a lot of the repetitions, like doing a lot of drilling and practice with that. It's very hard for, like you said, like, for your mom or anybody else to say like, they have that kind of hero mentality of like, I would have done this, like you said, you didn't practice it. You haven't done it. You don't know how your body reacts in those situations. So for me, it's, leaning into, I've done it dozens and hundreds of times in practice to be able to, those times when shit actually is hitting the fan, it becomes muscle memory. I don't really know where you kind of.
No. So, I mean, like we'll give, not that we're experts on anything. I mean, we can put this on Instagram and all of a sudden we become experts. But, most people don't know what OODA loop is,
Right.
or like practical steps to take when shit gets like that. And everybody has it happen, whether you're a parent with kids, you're a dog owner, all of a sudden your dog's getting a fight. Who knows what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest steps that I learned, like a practical step, is when shit is hitting the fan, the first thing I do is just take a deep breath, right? And then that allows, physiologically, it makes your body do some other stuff, and it kind of brings you off the X or out of the situation. And sometimes I'll literally even take like a step back, right? Just move so I'm not like tunnel visioned and locked and like stress locked, so to speak. And then whatever the situation is, I figured out, okay, and I'll use my evening last night as an example. So we're driving home from doing lessons with a client. All of a sudden I get a blowout on the car. Wasn't something I was anticipating. Quickly, while the car's, starting to lose control and function, I observed what was going on. Okay, I got a flat tire. That's the problem, right? What do I need to do to address the problem? First part is I need to get off the highway, pull over into a gas station. The gas station I pulled over into, not the nicest one on the planet. So then, the problem is I have a flat tire. Now I need to fix it. What do I need to fix it? I need a jack, lug nut, pull the tire off, switch it with a spare tire. Thankfully, I had all that stuff. Another little problem that kind of, is me and Marcy coming home. So we're at not a nice gas station in a uncommon car. And I was like, people were staring. So I'm like, I don't need your help with the tire. I can handle this. You just kind of run Overwatch to make sure we don't get robbed. And then work through the tire, fix the problem, drove home. Life is good, right? So observe the problem, orient to what I need to do. We made a decision, pull into the gas station, made a plan, prioritized the problems, and executed. Life is good, right?
I mean, I was gonna say, like with that, whether it's mental or physical, it comes down to preparedness. Like how I was saying, it's all the practice that you can put into like a military or police kind of mentality to practice it over and over and over again. But then also physically being prepared, whether it's you had that blowout, like your vehicle had the spare, you had the lug nuts, you had the tire wrench, whatever it was, when it comes to your dog, like when it comes to having a personal dog and you're out on a walk, what do you have on you for those situations? Like, are you prepared? Do you have...
I was joking with Ashley after Drake's incident. Now she's going to have a whole like Ryobi rescue kit carried around with her skill saws, everything.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. We were saying for especially like for snare traps, like if it was a snare trap, you wouldn't have been able to get it off. One of her Game Lands friends said like you have to have wire cutters for those kind of traps. There is no release. Like if it snared his foot, and that also would have made it a lot worse. It would have made it a lot bloodier.
Are those like and I'm ignorant to all that stuff. Are snare traps like the one that like rip them up into a tree, kind of, or is it just?
So I think that's more cartoonish. Like I don't know, like how high it rips them up. But like you could definitely have like base level traps that it just snares them and keeps them contained on the ground, or you like ones that you could tie it off to something else and it moves them kind of. But yeah, so like having some sort of snips for that would be a good idea. Like I'm definitely gonna look into that.
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna be pissed if we're out there and I get like. When we were at the beach, then I got snagged by some fish hooks.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, that was at a pack walk. All of a sudden, I was walking, going to talk to a client, and all of a sudden, I had two fish hooks with a 40-ounce weight embedded in the bottom of my foot through my flip-flop. It was interesting. Something I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah.
And I was like, Greg, I need your fucking Leatherman.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's kind of the thing is like you were able to keep, not that like it made this big impact, but like you were able to keep a little bit more of a level head knowing like, okay, we have tools, like, okay, like we have gear to make this better. And, it was able to come out a lot easier, but had it been worse and we needed the tools, like at least we had them, and like you said, being prepared makes that shit hits the fan moment a lot more easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally. So like, if you're walking your dog, and you walk it around a bunch of off leash dogs, do you carry a stick or are you not prepared? So when that off leash dog charges you, your process to get to your OODA loop or your process to get out of that X or get off the X is going to be a lot harder to deal with if you don't have any kind of defensive measures. If you don't carry, mace or, dog spray, a pet corrector or a stick or something like
Air
that.
horn, who knows?
Yeah, air horn. Like, it's one of those things where if you're worried about something happening, like, you should, like, you can't practice that. Like, you can't practice a dog charging at you all the time. So, like, dealing with stress, you just have to mentally be prepared in other ways, but physically to be
There
able
is
to deal with
definitely
those things.
some cool studies that if you like round table stuff in your own mind, right? So you think about like, okay, I'm being charged by a dog. Obviously, you don't want to put yourself in a situation with that. But if you constantly think about what you would do to safely get through that, you can actually start to build the fundamentals of like muscle memory, so to speak. So you build that neural pathway just through thought. So you can prepare yourself for that. But I think the biggest thing is like you just have to think about stuff to be more proactive rather than reactive.
Absolutely.
Whether it's home defense, whether it's you and your dog, you and your kids driving to the store and your tire blows out. Like think about weird stuff and then decide and make a plan and push yourself through it. But I think one of the overall things that people can do, and it doesn't have to be like task specific. If you just make yourself do hard shit and prepare yourself, whatever it is, whether it's, cold plunges are a trending thing right now. I do it all the time. They suck. It seems to help with stress. Getting to the gym, doing hard workouts, just make yourself do hard things and you intentionally deal with stress. And then when the random stuff does happen, you already have built up like a tolerance to stress, so to speak.
I mean, absolutely. And like, for us, that's kind of a second nature thing where like we almost don't even recognize that we're doing it anymore. But like we are continuing to allow stress into our lives to like intentionally to be able to get better at it, to be able to continue to build character, to be able to continue to deal with that. Throughout my martial arts instructor training that I did in the Marine Corps, one of my instructor trainers for me said that it's called stress inoculation, just like it's any other vaccine or any other shot, again, regardless of what you think about vaccines or whatever. When you get inoculated to something, you get a little bit of the bad stuff. Your body deals with it. You fight it. You get better. A little bit of bad stuff. Your body deals with it. Fight it. Get better. So stress inoculation is just that. You get a little bit of stress. You deal with it. You get better for it. Add more stress. Get better for it. Same thing for dog training. The dogs introduce a little bit of stress, not way over threshold, just enough to where it's right.
Yep.
The dog can get better, learn from it, build and grow. It's the same thing for people is stress inoculation. Like you need to give yourself that stress vaccine or whatever you want to call it, so you can continually get better and better. And it's very apparent with people who don't do that or haven't done that or have lived different lives where, they probably, I feel like everyone's been through stressful events in their life, but if you don't understand the mentality of capitalizing on it, like capitalize on the stress that you've had.
Make it a learning moment rather than a point of failure.
Right. Absolutely. And that's just going to be a huge driving factor towards you being better for the next time versus just, it's always a woe is me moment when you're under stress.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in society today.
Absolutely.
I don't know how political we'll take it or how ranting will go, but it like that whole victim mentality shit that happens, man, it absolutely drives me insane. Like the biggest, and I even do it with you guys when you come to me with a problem or, an employee comes to me with a problem, XYZ happened. Okay, what did you do to make that happen?
Yeah.
Right. And then a lot of people, now they're used to it like a year in, but the first time I would say that to people,
how dare you?
Oh, what do you mean? That's not my fault. This person did XYZ, blah, blah, blah. No. You are accountable for you. Don't worry about all the other bullshit. You just fix you and then think about what you want and think about the avenues you can take to get there.
Yeah.
And then now people are starting to get the hang of it and hopefully it helps them out. But
no,
or they just think I'm an asshole and that's fine too.
It's all good. Builds character.
It does. Stress inoculation.
Absolutely. Like that was, a big thing. And like, I remember doing all sorts of different like communication drills. Like we used to make the guys like, doing PT or whatever, like, they're being physically exerted, but then it's always the mental part of it, like, cause like when shit's going down, like it doesn't matter how physically prepared you are, like it doesn't matter how physically fit you are. It always comes down to the mental part of it. Like you need to get on a radio and and clearly talk to whoever to call in for support, or like Ashley, like she needed to clearly tell me what was going on, or clearly tell you what was going on to save time to, progress to getting a better result, so like putting guys in the physical stress and then making them do small, calm, communicative drills where it's like, you're doing 1,000 burpees. Now run over here and tell me like recite me 3 lines out of a book or something that like you read at the beginning of doing the burpees,
Yeah.
doing all sorts of that stuff. Cause like,
or even simple problems. That was one of my favorite drills. So I did defensive tactics stuff. I wasn't like an improved instructor, but I would help out back when I was a police officer, and then, overseas did a bunch of stuff like that. But you can do a simple drill, whether you're just rolling with somebody on the ground and get their heart rate up, get it to where they're not controlling their breathing, and then ask them something like, hey, what's 2 + 2?
Yeah.
And they've known that answer for 20 years, and they'll look at you like a deer in a headlight. I'm like, it's a simple question. What's 2 + 2? If you answer it correctly, I'll stop punching you in the face.
Yeah.
And a lot of people fail that because mentally they're not capable. And that, like you were touching on, it was, you could have the most jacked, athletic, like CrossFit athlete, but if they haven't mentally prepared themselves to do that, you're still going to fail.
Right. Like if like, just as much as you need to be able to go from 0 to 100, you need to be able to go from 100 to 0 just as fast. Like you need to be able to like take that shock, take that adrenaline, and then compartmentalize it while you need to deliver communication stuff. Like that's generally what's going to happen in every shit it's the fan situation. You have to communicate to somebody something.
Yeah.
And if you can't harness and push that adrenaline to the side while you do that, it's just going to make it that much harder for you to get to your solution.
Oh yeah, and we'll watch live PD and stuff, and just for shits and giggles, Marcy's obsessed with the show.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see that in some cops, really bad scenario will happen, and they start screaming on the radio. They're saying like non-factual things because they're just redlined with stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see other dudes that are literally in the middle of a shooting, and they're like, "Yep, we're here. I need someone here. I need someone there." And they're like formulating a plan while reflexively being in a gunfight. I'm like, that's someone, number one, I want on my team when the apocalypse hits, but like he's been through some shit, and he actually like pushes and trains himself outside of it, because you don't get that type of training in law enforcement. So that's, I mean, you do, but you don't get as much. It's not in depth. Like it's, that's a whole different topic. Training in law enforcement sucks.
I always thought it was funny. I kind of realized it 6 or 7 years into the Marine Corps, was that, first responder job, y'all get training probably not so little, but in retrospect to what you do, you are in the game 99% of the time compared to your training.
Yeah.
Whereas in the military, we're 99% training and very little is in the game.
Yes.
And like I just thought that was a very interesting concept of how like how we back that, like how we like.
Yeah, it's all political, and I don't mean like left or right. It's just budgets, and most police departments don't understand that they need to run their agency like a business and treat the funding accordingly, and they have the wrong priorities as far as like what is the most important, right? Like to me, if I was a chief of police or in charge of some sheriff's office, training would be the number one priority for everybody, because that's what keeps you out of the bullshit, all the negative stories you see where they are actually like, it was a bad apple or a bad actor. All of that is training. And even, the amount of use of force incidents that you see on live PD or on the news, I would anecdotally say 95% of that would have been deconflicted if the officer just knew a little bit more about like jujitsu or like just how to control someone's body, right? But that nobody wants to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like defensive tactics, when I was going through with my agency, it was a requirement 1 day a year. So you got 6 hours of defensive tactics training. And I can't even tell you how many, use of force encounters I was involved in.
Right. It's all like on the job training, it seems. Like,
yeah.
Like everything is like trial by fire.
Last time I did this, I got my jaw broke. So maybe I'll look out for that next time.
Yeah,
and then firearms training was once a year. Mm-hmm. And, granted, law enforcement, lethal encounters, very few and far between, depending on where you work. But still, once a year, maybe twice, it's way below par, right? And it needs to be better for sure. And then in the military or the contracting stuff, like I would just get bored and go to a range. It was amazing.
Yeah, and like definitely like our certain standards there. Like we did practice, or like we had our annual qualifications for certain things, but it was still. If on average you have nowadays not deploying as much anyway, but for every 100,000 armed force personnel, like how many of them have deployed or are deployed? Like there's a lot of practice for the game.
Oh yeah,
and not a lot of action on it. But like what we were saying, like I feel like it's a lot of that practice just goes into that stress preparedness. Like knowing, when you get yourself in that situation, how to come through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is going to be a sick transition. It just popped in my brain. Like, you train really hard to make the basics and the fundamentals reflexive for us, right? Like, I want to be so proficient with a rifle that I don't have to think about how to manipulate the rifle in the middle of a gunfight, right? I want to think about what that person's doing and what I need to do. But I don't want to think about, like, oh, where's the mag release? Oh, do I have a lock back? Or, thinking about front sight, rear sight, or like this is my holdover on distance. Like I don't want to think about any of that, right? I want to make that reflexive. And that's what we try to do in dog training. We want to do so many repetitions with dogs, especially in like behavior modification. If you do it well, you can remap the dog and you get them so many repetitions of, rather than be aggressive or bark, lunge, growl, just focus on a sit, right? Make that sit so hard, or that down command so hard, it's no longer a choice. So if the dog does that, then it can't do that, right? They're non-competing behaviors. It sounded better in my head, but it worked out.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up on that.
All right.
This was just a random discussion based on Drake's foot getting caught in a bear trap.
Yeah, so Drake is okay now. He
shout out Drake's Instagram. Let's get Drake some followers.
Drake the Boykin.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Drake's name, or there's a lot of Boykins named Drake. It's just a male duck. So duck dog getting him out.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like that's why there's a
I thought Ashley liked the rapper.
No. It just like doubles down on that. But that's why like there's like that Drake clothing company. It's like a hunting clothing company. It's just
do I look like a hunter?
A male? No. You got a nice flannel on, but no.
That's true.
But yeah, so Drake, he got out of the trap in about 6 or so minutes. Like after she called me, called you, tried figuring out all that stuff. They eventually got it out. He went running off totally fine. No breaks, no swelling, no nothing. He got all of his treats over the last couple days, and
the weird part of me kind of wants to see how one of those feels. I don't know.
I don't.
Do you touch a hot plate at a restaurant when it comes out?
I mean, I've done some things, multiple times, and I'm like, I'm
gonna get on Amazon. I don't know if you can get those on Amazon. I'm ordering one, and the next episode we're gonna stick our fist through
a bear trap.
A bear trap, not the clawed one.
Little like fox
the same one that
trap.
Drake got.
That's terrible.
We'll go out to the game lands and snag that one.
If this podcast gets 2 million downloads, we'll put our hand in a bear trap. But yeah, no, he's fine. Everything's good with him. And lessons learned. We immediately posted that to as many people as possible. So you called your share of buddies and all that stuff. Let them know, like, be prepared for those kind of things.
Yeah.
Learn from experience, learn from other people's experience, and try to be prepared for that.
I love it. Where can people find you on the web?
On the web, I am at rsk9nc.craig. Also, the training supply store is RSK9 Training Supplies. And then we have Ridgeside K9 NC.
Yeah.
And Mike Swarchek. I'm Mike _.
I don't know. I should probably read that more. But yeah.
Links in the description below.
Yeah, for sure. For the two of you.